Hi, I'm Stephen Power from Valentia Photography Workshops in County Kerry, Ireland. In this video I'm going to talk about how to turn a negative into a positive using Adobe Lightroom Classic and the tone curve. Hi, there's been a resurgence in film photography in the last few years, probably more than that actually, and I've found myself going back to making my own black and white negatives, processing them at home, and it's something I haven't done maybe for 30 years. I did think that scanning the images and then turning them into positives might be a time-consuming and quite expensive process, but as I'll show you in other videos, it's not that expensive or that difficult to scan your images. And what I'm going to show you now is how to turn a scanned negative into a positive using Adobe Lightroom, and a very simple technique with tone curve. So I actually photographed this negative with my camera, and here it is in the develop module of Lightroom, and I'll talk you through my process of turning this negative into a positive. The first thing I want to do actually is make sure that it's straight, and because I use my camera to do this, it's not straight and it might not be absolutely flat. So I'll come down into the transform panel in Lightroom, and then I'll click the level button, which makes it nice and straight, and also I use the vertical button just to make sure that it's as flat as it can be. Then the next thing I want to do is turn this negative into a fairly basic positive, and I'll use the tone curve and the point curve within the tone curve for this technique. Now you can see I'm using at time of recording the most up-to-date version of the tone curve in Lightroom. But if you're not, then all you simply need to do is find the point curve, and then you'll get this straight line in the graph from the bottom left to the top right corner. And all we're going to do is put the cursor on the bottom left point and drag it up until it's at the top left point, and you'll see that the image goes completely white. Now we're going to take the top right point and drag that down to the bottom right, and all we've done is reverse the curve. And hey presto, we have a positive from a negative. Now, it's not perfect, it's quite flat looking, so we want to put some tones into this. The first thing we need to be aware of is that most of the sliders will be reversed. So for example, if we take the exposure slider to the right, which is normally increasing the exposure, then the image goes darker. And if we take it to the left, which is normally decreasing the exposure, underexposing the image, it goes brighter. So that's just something we need to be aware of when we're making some of these changes. So I might just take the exposure up very slightly, reduce the highlights, in this case by going up and not down, and the same with the shadows, until we get to a point where we think the image looks about right. I like to use the clarity slider. Now, interestingly, with the clarity, it does go in the direction you would expect. So I'm just bringing out some of the tones with the clarity slider. and then maybe reducing the shadows again just to enhance those tones a little bit more. And that's about right. I'm trying. Oh, actually, the dehaze slider is working very nicely there, probably because of the particular tones I've got in that image. This side of the image is a little bit too bright, so I'm going to use the graduated filter tool. Just pull that over and then take the highlights down by sliding it to where you'd expect them to go up, and the same with the shadows. And that's brought the shadows down nicely. And then I'll do the opposite with this side of the image where the shadows are a little bit dark there, and bring them up by sliding down. So you've just got to think back to front a bit, really. Now, the next thing is I've noticed is this image is quite spotty, and that's because I was photographing it on a light panel. Got plenty of dust on it. Now you can take as many precautions as you like, and the more you take, the better, because you'll have to do less spotting in the in Lightroom if you use a blower brush or something like that to take the dust off first when you actually see it. But I'm just going to do a quick dust, or spotting I should say, digitally with Lightroom. Take some of the dust off. Now, I won't do them all. Actually, there's quite a nasty one there. I just want to get that out, and then this makes an amazing difference to the image, and can be painstaking depending on how much you can get off before you actually come into Lightroom. But that's just to give you some idea of how it looks with a little bit of spotting. And then the next thing I want to do is crop the image, because we've got all this blank negative here as well. So go into the crop tool in Lightroom and make sure the aspect ratio is unlocked. So we've got this little padlock here, and that means we can independently move each side of the crop window, if you like. So I'm just going to pull it in to the image. Now, what I'm going to do with this one is leave some of the border on, some of the writing, if you like, that's on the side of the negative, because that can look quite effective when it's printed. So I'm just going to leave that on. You don't have to, you can come right down to the actual image if you want. So actually that isn't looking too bad. And then the final process would be to put in some sharpening, maybe not too much, just a little pinch of sharpening if you feel that the image needs it. And that's it. A fairly easy and simple way of turning your negatives into positives using Lightroom. And I do hope you'll try it. In fact, I hope more people will try and get into black and white. And I've got some videos on how to process your own black and white film, and I'll be doing some on how to scan the images quite simply using a camera. Click the subscribe button below to stay in touch for more tutorials from Valencia Photography Workshops.